wheels keep turning, sunrise burning, road ahead so wide.
All right, hello everyone. Just gonna do a video on the pros and cons of Swift. So in the list that I have, the cons outweigh the pros, but I'll give you the whole list before I actually get into it. So I'll go a pro first, con second, and then I'll just alternate. So anyway, they do have a lot of freight, but the problem is they also have a lot of drivers. So with the amount of freight that they have, you kind of could only expect to get around 2,200 to 2,700 miles. You're not really going to break 3,000 miles consistently. You're going to be more stuck at the 2,000, 2,700, 2,200-ish miles. 2,500 is more than doable, but it kind of feels like they kind of cap you right around 2,500. And that's for both company and lease purchase. It was that way. The only time they really give you more freight as like a company driver than like a owner operator or vice versa, whatever, is if you've been with the company for a while. So like if you're a million miler, a 2 million miler, so on and so forth, they kind of prioritize them a little bit more, it feels like. Anyway, the thing kind of goes into planning. And the problem I had with planning is, I mean, I guess it's just the fact of they don't necessarily plan you properly. Sometimes they'll give you a plan and the plan just doesn't make sense. Like they have, like sometimes they'll give you like 3 plans. So you'll have one plan they want you to do first, a second they want you to do second, and then another one they want you to do last. But sometimes it makes no sense because you have to deadhead more miles in the way that they give it to you than the way that you think makes sense, and that's all because of like the scheduling. Then again, that could also just be like the shipper or receiver only having availability for that time. I'm not 100% sure, honestly, because I don't do like those logistics side of it. But anyway, sometimes they'll give you 3 plans and it just doesn't make sense, and it kind of takes away from your miles for that day. So, in my opinion, I feel like it would be better to just give the driver a portion of those and then giving them something else. Then again, I don't necessarily know what freight they have to work with at that time, so I'm not 100% sure, honestly. Anyway, the next pro will then be driver leaders. I put that as a weight of 1 because of the micromanaging. Some driver leaders do not micromanage. Some driver leaders do micromanage. It also sometimes depends on how long you've been there, your experience levels, things like that. But the driver leader I had, it didn't necessarily matter if you had experience, if you didn't have experience. He would just always call you, always calling, asking what you're doing, is everything going fine, is this, is that. And then like if you detour because of there's like an accident, or you detour because there's construction, he'll call you, be like, why are you not on a major highway, why are you taking back roads, so on and so forth. He's like, you should take this route, not this route. Then I'm like, no, I'm not taking that route because that exit's closed. Then I have to go another so many miles and then turn around when it was easier to just go this way. Things like that. Just the, I guess that's kind of more of micromanaging, but I'm just lumping these two together. Anyway, but yeah, just kind of that. But then you could also get driver leaders that don't do that quite as much. Problem is it's kind of really just the luck of the draw at that point. But yeah, like I said, my driver leader was a little bit more micromanagey, which was kind of annoying. He drove before, so I mean, he should understand things a little bit more, but sometimes I felt like, you know, he never drove before and he was just lying about that because some of the things he said was kind of ridiculous. But anyway, I just kind of lumped those two together because they kind of go hand in hand. They're really the same thing, honestly, at this point. But yeah, anyway, driver leaders could be good, they could be bad. I put it as a pro and a con, kind of in different reasons. Anyway, they kind of just cancel each other out at that point. And then I also separated trucks and truck amenities because I wanted to say that they have a good selection of trucks. They have a bunch of different models and makes and things like that, which is nice. It gives you diversity on what you could drive. So if you switch trucks, maybe you get another truck that you wanted to drive. Like they have Volvos, they have Kenworths, they have Freightliners, Internationals. International, they suck in my opinion. The worst truck I've ever drove. The Freightliner is just it does the job really. Ultimately, it just does the job and it does it well enough, and it's fairly reliable. Kenworth, they're nice. Transmissions are a little odd on them. Volvo, they have a lot of good amenities for the driver. They're very comfortable. They have a good transmission, but they have electrical issues. They have very low parts availability, things like that. So, I mean, it kind of just depends on what you want, what you're looking for. If you value quick turnover, like in terms of repairs, then probably a Freightliner. Kenworth could do pretty decent now, anyway. But anyway, yeah, they have a decent truck selection. But then their amenities, the problem with their amenities is it kind of depends. If you get a newer truck, you get good amenities. You don't get a newer truck, you don't get good amenities. So that's why I put that as a con instead of a pro like the trucks. So yeah, ultimately it just kind of depends on what you get. All of them come with cable TV, I believe, DirecTV. They sometimes come with a fridge, sometimes don't come with a fridge. They don't come with microwaves. They do come with inverters, though. No APUs. So, I mean, they're very big sticklers on keeping your idle time down, but then they don't give you an APU. So then they call you complaining when your idle time reaches like 50, 60, 70%. And it's like, okay, well, it's like 90 degrees outside. I'm not going to bake like a baked potato in here. You guys don't have APUs. So, I mean, there's nothing I could do about it besides idle. And I even have it on Smart Idle, the Opti Idle. So, I mean, not much you could do about that. Anyway, that's kind of why I put their amenities as a con. Then dispatchers, they were actually pretty good. I put their weight as a 4. So they were pretty good. I liked the dispatchers. You could always contact them whenever you needed to. You ask them, hey, why is it taking so long for a load to come in? They'd be like, well, it's because we're like 60 loads down right now, like behind. Or they would give you other reasons, but they would contact you really quickly. And sometimes they'd even call you, which was pretty nice. So like one time I had home time set and I was stuck in Kansas City, I believe. So Edwardsville, that's where I was. Anyway, I sent a message saying, hey, what's going on with the loads? Is it because you guys are down on loads or what is it? Anyway, they decided to call me. And I kind of explained on the phone why I was kind of rushing it a little bit. And they're like, yeah, we saw you have home time and we don't necessarily want to get you farther away. But let me see what I have here real quick again. So he refreshes his page. He puts my location. He puts delivery within so many miles of like Milwaukee or something like that. He then sees a load that goes into I believe it was either Milwaukee or Chicago, like right around Chicago, the outside of Chicago. He's like, okay, so I got this load, and then let me see what there is heading out of there closer to the terminal in Menasha. And then he's like, oh, okay, I have a load here to take you there. So he got me 2 loads to get me into the Wisconsin area, and then another load to get me to the terminal. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. He responded pretty quickly. He was pretty polite. He was understanding of the situation. I explained everything. He sent me those 2 loads, committed to both of them. One was then dispatched to me. The other one just stayed uncommitted, and I made home time on time. Perfectly fine. It ran literally perfectly fine. So, that's kind of an example of the dispatchers being proactive. A lot of other companies I've been at, they would be like, well, the two other companies I've been at, they would be kind of like, don't contact dispatch. And I'm like, okay, well, dispatch is kind of who's giving you the loads and things like that. So, I mean, having contact with them is kind of nice. So, with Swift, they kind of grade their dispatchers on how quick they respond and things like that. So, yeah, they were actually pretty good. Then I put a con as orientation because at least the terminal I went to, it it was not organized whatsoever. The recruiter also kind of messed things up, so it made things not go as well. Anyway, once you get there, you do like this English test, which is kind of stupid when you are a English native, but whatever. It's the most easiest test I've ever taken in my life. Anyway, can't really fail it unless you are a foreigner that doesn't really speak English. Then, I mean, I guess you could fail it then. But anyway, that's the first thing you do. Then the next thing I did was my road test because I came in experienced. Then from my road test, I went to do my DOT physical, even though I had one that still had a year and a half. They force you to do another physical. And at that physical, I also did a drug test. Anyway, it was just so unorganized and everything was messed up. Nothing was finished by the time I got there. And so I put orientation as a con because it just didn't run smoothly whatsoever. I put that weight as a 3 because there were still some good things about it. Like once it got to the slides after doing the road test and everything like that, doing all of the DOT physicals and drug tests, it started running smoother again. So I just put the weight as a 3 instead of what I was initially going to do, a 5. Anyway, yeah, that was orientation. It wasn't that great. Then I put home time as a pro because they're actually pretty flexible about that. The home time is usually 1 day for every week out, but sometimes I was able to request 2 days for every week out. At least with my driver leader, I was able to. Like 90% of the time. Only a couple times I wasn't able to. So I would be out like 2-3 weeks, be home like 5 days, 4 or 5 days. It was perfectly fine with me because 2 of those days were traveling because I was driving between different states to and from home time, so it kind of sucked, which is kind of the issue that I had with the recruiters, which honestly I probably should have put the recruiters as a con on here. Make the cons way outweigh the pros at that point because that would be a weight of 5. Let's just actually talk about that right now. Even though it's not on my list right now, let's just talk about it. Anyway, when I was going through the recruiting phase, they told me that I could park my truck up here. There would be no issues with it. They hire out of here. There's freight that comes close enough to the area, and so I don't have to worry about anything. I could park up here and be totally good. Well, once I get to driving, they are like, yeah, nope, your accounts are not even available in that area. So the account that I initially went in under, I had to change. That account was not available. Then the other account they said was available was also not available. And then OTR they said is technically a little out of my hiring range, but they'll make it do. Then they're like, but you might have to do an extra week out. I'm like, I mean, I don't necessarily want to do that. It's already 3 weeks. So what they were able to do is get me on the Great Lakes Regional. But even though, you know, it's called the Great Lakes Regional and you live in the Great Lakes area, they weren't able to get me to home. So I don't really know why they call it the Great Lakes Regional. They should have just called it the Midwest Regional because it's not really a Great Lakes Regional. It's more of a Midwest Regional. Anyway, so I had to start parking 4 or 5 hours away from my home. So I had to drive 4 or 5 hours just to home, 4 or 5 hours back from home. So I had like a whole day just taken up just traveling. So it would cut into both days quite significantly. Anyway, that process was really terrible. So back to home time. Yeah, they're pretty flexible with it. So that's pretty nice. However, vacation, I put that as a con because you could do vacation, but anything over like 5 days, they make you turn in your truck. which is kind of annoying because other companies I worked at, it's 2 weeks and then you have to turn in your truck, a week and a half, and then you have to turn in your truck. Now, over here at Swift, it was 5 days. So I put that as a con, a weight of 3, just because you have to turn in your truck. Sure, they're flexible with giving you time off, giving you the 2 weeks you want, like they did with me, but they were a little hesitant about it. But all I just had to do was turn in my truck. They ended up not using the truck, so that was nice, but I still had to clear it all out and everything. So then when I got back, I had to put everything back in. But I mean, it's not too bad, I guess, if you don't care about that, but there's going to be a lot of people who do. Anyway, then accounts is the last pro I have. They do have a wide selection of accounts. Didn't feel like they had as much of a selection as CR England when I was kind of going through dedicated accounts with different mega carriers. So I put their weight as a 3. But anyway, they do have a good amount of selection of accounts. You could get pretty much whatever account you want, honestly. You could get a Walmart, you could get a Target, you could get regional, you could get, there's a lot of different accounts you could get. But anyway, yeah, I put the accounts as a 3 because there's a good selection. And then the last con I have is miles. I put that as a weight of 5. Even though they have a lot of freight, they don't give you a whole lot of miles. And the reason why is because of the amount of drivers they have, I think. At least that's what I think. So I put their weight as a 5 for miles because it seems like once you reach right around the 2,000 miles, which I could reach 2,000 miles in about 4 days or less, honestly, 3 days, you kind of get cut off a little bit and you're kind of sitting around waiting, and it's kind of annoying. There's been a lot of times that I would get straight to 2,000 miles halfway through the week, essentially. And then all of a sudden, I'm just sitting for 2 days because they're giving other people with less miles loads over me and prioritizing them over the person that's running. That's just because they have too many drivers for the amount of freight, in my opinion. I'm not sure if that's really the reason, but from what I've felt like, that's what it kind of seemed like was the case. Because you would have all of this freight for the first 2,000 miles, 2,200 miles, and then all of a sudden just drop and tank real hard. And then the final day, you get like a 200 mile, 300 mile load, deliver it that day, and then now you're at 2,500. And it's like every single week, repeatedly, it would be like that. So it kind of limits your paycheck, which is kind of annoying, especially because sitting around waiting is awfully boring. It makes it feel like you're there for weeks at a time instead of days. So, yeah, I mean, the miles just wasn't good. Like, you would get to 2,000, 2,500 miles consistently, but the consistency in how you get there is way broken up, and it's just not great. So I put that as a weight of 5 just because it wasn't great whatsoever. So anyway, that's kind of the pros and cons that I've experienced. I'm not sure what anyone else has experienced. This is also accurate for both lease and company. With company, though, it's a little bit worse. Honestly, with lease, you kind of get cut off more around 2,700, I'd say, rather than the 22 to 25. But anyway, yeah, that's just what I've noticed with Swift, and that's the pros and cons I have. So thank you for watching.